Good morning. Hey, at least the students will say good morning back. Come on, guys. I want to ask all of us to please turn off our cell phone or put them on silent and make sure they're off the table so we can avoid feedback noise. You may notice board members accessing their laptops during the meeting. They're using the laptop solely to access the board meeting materials that are in electronic format. This is an official business meeting of the Medical Board of California. As such, disruptions of the board business will not be tolerated. We have a designated time on the agenda for public comment and ask for public comment on each agenda item. I ask that you be respectful of the need to conduct the board's business. Should anyone disrupt the meeting, I will ask the person to conduct him or herself in such a manner that permits the board to transact its business. This meeting will be available via teleconference. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by a moderator who will be facilitating the teleconference process. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before you make your comments. To request to make a comment during the public comment period, press *1. You will hear a tone indicating you are in the queue for the comment. If you change your mind and do not want to make a comment, please press #. Assistance is available throughout the teleconference meeting. To request a specialist, press *0. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. During agenda item 16, public comments on items not on the agenda, board has limited the public comment period for individuals and the teleconference for 20 minutes. In addition, public comment from individuals here at the meeting will also be limited to 20 minutes. Therefore, after 20 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. During public comment on any other agenda item, 10 minutes will be allowed for the comments from individuals on the teleconference line and those in the audience. After 10 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. Business services staff will be assisting me in receiving the public comments via teleconference during this meeting. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on the agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand or come forward and you will be recognized. I would like to request all speakers to complete a presenter slip so I can call you by name at the appropriate time and that the record of this meeting can be full and complete. However, this is voluntary. Please give your speaker slips to Ms. Toof. Thank you. Ms. Toof identified herself, so we plan to end the meeting today definitely by 3 p.m. and I'm hoping by 2. I would also like to introduce the students from Midwestern College of Medicine. Guys, stand up. Thanks for coming all the way from Arizona. I would like to call the meeting to the order. Ms. Toof, roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat?
Present.
Dr. Bishop?
Here.
Judge Feinstein?
Here.
Dr. Hawkins?
Here.
Dr. Kraus?
Present.
Ms. Lawson?
Here.
Dr. Levine? Here. Dr. Lewis?
Present.
Ms. Pines?
Present.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Here.
Mr. Warmoth?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Dr. Gonadev?
Here.
Thank you.
So the next item is agenda item 16, public comments on items not on the agenda. Do we have any slips, Kim? Anyone likes to make a comment? Thank you. Any comments on the phone?
There are no comments at this time.
Thank you. Maybe you took this seriously that we got to end by 2. Agenda item 17, this is a public hearing. Regulations, consideration and possible action on the proposed regulations amending Title 16, Division 13, CCR Sections 1364.1 1364.11, 1364.13, and 1364.15, related to citable offenses, citation disclosure, and citation and other fine authority for allied health professional. Ms. Webb. Okay. So this is a official hearing, so I got to read exactly what my people wrote, so put up with me. Good morning. My name is Dr. Dave Ganadev, President of the Medical Board. I'll be presiding over this hearing. There are two hearings today. The same process will be followed for both hearings. Therefore, please let me outline the hearing process first. Then I will transition into the two individual hearings. We ask that persons who wish to testify please fill out speaker slip available at the table in the back of the room. The purpose of this hearing is to receive oral testimony concerning the regulatory proposals described in the notice. Regulations must comply with 6 legal review standards, which are: number 1, necessity. Is there demonstrated evidence that there is a need for the regulation? Number 2, authority. Does the board have legislated authority to adopt the regulation? Number 3, consistency. Does the regulation conflict with other regulations or statutes? Number 4, clarity. Can the regulation be easily understood by those affected? Number 5, non-duplication. Does the regulation duplicate other regulations or statutes? Number 6, reference. Which statute does the regulation implement, interpret, or make specific? Testimony should address only these 6 standards. Before we begin, I would like to briefly describe the procedures that will be followed. The entire hearing will be taped. Those persons testifying will not be sworn in or cross-examined. All recommendations and objections will be considered by the board members. Responses to all objections or recommendations will be included in the final statement of reasons. The board will maintain a rulemaking file of this proposed regulatory action. Written comments for both regulations being heard today must have been received by 5 p.m. on October 25, 2016. The record of this hearing, written testimony, and all other written comments received by the deadlines as noticed will become part of the rulemaking process. For the record, no public comment was received. A completed copy of the rulemaking file will be available for review at the Medical Board's office in Sacramento. To ensure fairness and that everything is completely entered into the record and to enable everyone to hear those who are giving testimony, we ask that those testifying follow these procedures. Number 1, please speak loudly and clearly. First, identify yourself and who you represent. Then please state your position, support or oppose at the beginning of your testimony. Oral testimony will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Please do not repeat testimony already given. Any written comments you have with you today should be submitted orally, summarized orally, but should not be read. First hearing. Now I would like to begin the first hearing regarding the board citation and fine regulations. For the record, today's date is October 28, 2016, and this hearing is beginning at approximately 9:13 a.m. This is the time and place set by the Medical Board to conduct public hearing on the proposed regulations to implement, interpret, or make specific sections 125.9, 148, 2027, 2227, 2228, 2229, and 2234 of Business and Professions Code. The Medical Board of California is considering changes to Division 13 of the Title 16 of the California Code of Regulations as described in the notice published in the California Regulatory Notice Register and sent by mail or electronic mail to those on the board's mailing and subscriber list. To summarize, licensed midwives and polysomnographic technologists, technicians, and trainees are licensed and registered and regulated by the board, but are not currently covered by the board citation and fine regulations. This proposed rulemaking will add licensed midwives, polysomnographic technologists, technicians, and trainees as licensees, registrants to whom the board may issue citations with orders of abatement and fines when these allied healthcare professionals violate statutes or regulations. In addition, this proposed rulemaking also proposes additional conforming changes and some technical changes to improve the clarity of the regulations at issue as described in the notice. After introductory remarks by our legal counsel, I will call on those persons who want to testify. But first, Ms. Webb, please offer any comments you have.
There's been no negative written comments received by the deadline, and so this is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to comment on these proposed regulations to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Now I will call on those persons who wish to testify concerning these proposed regulations. You are good. There are no public comments. Any comments on the phone?
Do we have any comments on the line? Susan?
No?
There are no comments at this time.
Thank you. So the next one is a motion.
I move to accept,
Hold on one second. Kim wants me to read this sentence.
official sentence.
Yeah. Since no one else wishes to speak, this hearing concerning the citation and fine regulations is closed. The motion should be, is there a motion to approve the regulations?
I move to accept these new regulations.
And it should say, let me read it actually. Approve the executive director making any non-substantial changes necessary to complete the regulatory package and submit it to the Office of the Administrative Law for finalization. That's what you meant, Dr. Lewis?
That's what I meant to say, I just couldn't quite get it out yet.
Thank you. Do we
getting
have a
there.
second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. Is there a public comment from the audience?
There are no comments at this time.
Public comments on the phones I heard already. Thank you. Ms. Stoof, roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat? Aye. Dr. Bishop? Aye. Judge Feinstein?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
It passes. Second hearing. Item number 18. Regulations, public hearing, consideration, and possible action on the proposed regulations and the requirements for physicians and probation, amending Title 16, Division 13, CCR Section 1358. Now, I would like to begin the second hearing, which deals with the physicians and probation. For the record, today's date is October 28, 2016, and this hearing is beginning at approximately 9:17 a.m. This is the time and place set by the medical board to conduct a public hearing on the proposed regulation to implement, interpret, or make specific sections 2227, 2228, 2229 of the Business and Professions Code. The proposed amendments eliminate obsolete language from the regulation and clarify that probationers are required to bear the costs and be in compliance with all the terms and conditions of the order placing them on probation. Any remarks, Ms. Webb?
We received no written comment by the deadline, so again, this is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to comment on the proposed regulations to do so.
I have no slips. Anyone like to comment? Thank you. Any comments on the phone?
There is a comment from the line of Eric Andrist. Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Anders.
I'm sorry, his line seems to be unavailable at this moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there, okay. Since no one else wishes to speak, this hearing concerning physicians and probation is closed. Members, any comments? Okay. Motion, I would like to have the motion to approve the executive director making any non-substantial changes necessary to complete the regulatory package and submit to the Office of the Administrative Law for finalization. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Dr. Levine is second. Dr. Wright Ms. Wright made the motion. Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat? Aye. Dr. Bishop?
Aye.
Judge Feinstein?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, next item is number 19, presentation and discussion and possible action on the University of California, Los Angeles International Medical Graduate Program. Dr. Bolat.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I want to take this opportunity to thank my esteemed colleagues here at the board, as well as the public, for allowing me the time to present this innovative program. So this program was independently an idea of myself and my colleague, Dr. Patrick Dowling of the UCLA Department of Family Medicine, where I'm serving as the Executive Vice Chair. And I believe as a result of the similar values and beliefs, we really wanted to hit 4 important points. That we really believe that training a diverse physician workforce to include all of those from under-resourced communities would actually create role models and mentors. That increasing the physician workforce in those traditionally under-resourced communities where poverty is inversely related to the number of practicing physicians, we wanted to address that with this program. The other point is developing new residency programs in those areas was a long-term strategy, knowing that many of those that train in an area will remain in the area, and that's both for subspecialty and primary care. And finally, we were interested in developing a community environment through strategic public health initiatives that would raise the community's health in and of itself, that it can't be done to the community, but for the community. So let's just talk briefly about this 10-year program. It's training and it trains and provides Spanish-speaking international medical graduates with an intensive course of professional instruction and clinical training so that they may pass the United States medical licensing exam. These UCLA scholars, as I call them, compete successfully for family medicine residency programs throughout the state of California, and in return, they must commit to practicing medicine for 2 to 3 years in a medically underserved community in either an urban or rural California, where their bicultural and bilingual skills are critically needed. So no surprise to all of us, the state of California is extremely diverse, both in language and culture. We have 1 in 5 residents that have limited English proficiency. And the purpose of our program was to address the fact that 6% of the doctors in the state of California are Hispanic, yet 38% of the population. And of that Hispanic population, 35% are living in underserved communities. And what we see up here in that orange and white is these are the health professional shortage areas throughout the state of California, and they're quite extensive, from north to south and as far east as we can go. As I stated, this program was developed before I was a member of the Medical Board of California. It was a 20, 30-year thought about linking graduate medical education to under-resourced communities. And my hats off and my thanks to the Honorable Holly Mitchell, who was the sole author of AB 1533, which put together a collaborative partnership between the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA, our UC Office of the President, and the Medical Board of California, then under Linda Whitney's stewardship. And with this group, we were able to present to the Health and Ways Committee and got a 100% favorable vote with no objections to move forward. Of course, with no funding from the state or UCLA, this is a program that's based upon sponsorship by various groups. This is just a nice picture because I like Team UCLA IMG, because right there on Dr. Dowling's left is Blanca Campos, a 2007 alumna, and now is serving as a teacher and mentor to our scholars. Our group is very diverse. It has several different countries represented throughout the countries, and you can see there, unfortunately, I can't see there. Let me give you let me get something closer so I can see. The big pie there at 45% are coming from Mexico, 20% from South America. Central America is represented by 18%. We have one person from Spain, and the Caribe is 16%. So those are the Dominican Republic and Cuba. So what is this program really looking to do? Very simplistic, A, B, C, D. Program A is where we have USMLE Step 1 preparation, as well as English for Health Professionals. B is where we're preparing people for the USMLE Step 2 CKCS, again, English for Health Professionals. Program C are where we have clinical rotations at UCLA and UCLA affiliates, and the English for Health Professionals. And finally, we are very committed to, we have to learn and train to teach the community involvement and community engagement. And our goal is, of course, a 100% match in a California Family Medicine residency program. This is just a quick picture of the didactic sessions that go on, so traditional grand rounds and other things do take place that we would expect from a program. These are our affiliated sites at UCLA, and the far right is the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services, which we work very closely with. This is a picture of our results to date, and as I mentioned last night, and hats off to Mr. Kurt Warden, who has helped us tremendously through his work, and I say these are his 104 doctors. We are able to, you can see in this picture where our folks are going. 38 out of 104 are in the Central Valley, are matched in the Central Valley, 48 in Southern California, 14 in the Coachella Valley, and 4 that were outside of California. And this picture is very important, and it's important for 2 reasons. One, if you can see it, I'm sorry, it's a rather small. I didn't mean that to happen, but it basically is. Let me go here. Showing on the left that in 2007 we had 2 people start in the program, and at that time, 2 out of 46% of those from our program filled California residency programs. And then it goes all the way down to say out of 9 positions or 10 positions that were given to international medical programs, we filled 9. So what we're really seeing is, and it's very well documented in the literature, there used to be close to 6,000 residency program slots that for 40 years international doctors were the answer to filling those gaps, be it subspecialty or primary care. And it's actually, that gap is narrowing, meaning that we're having maybe more U.S. students because we've opened a few more medical schools, and also we have a very robust Caribbean schools that are also populating the area of medical education and graduate medical education. Couple slides here. This is basically going to show you 2006 to 2012. Someone might ask, what was the attrition? So we came up with 71 enrolled individuals, and we lost 24 in Program A. In Program B, we had 17, and a couple didn't make it through. And at that point in time, we had 54 graduates. Between 2013 and 2017, we were able to decrease our attrition because we were probably learning more about the schools, because I can tell you from our desk, we found there's variation in schools, and the training that people are coming to us with their basic knowledge. We also lost less people, and if you were in the program, basically, you were going to make it. And so between that time, we had 50 graduates. So what are the outcomes? And this speaks to what I need to tell you, because B&P Code 2066.5, which are found on pages 207 and 208 of our 216 Medical Board of California book, our red book here, I had to come back and let you know of our outcomes. So to date, 66 of our 104 alumni, or 63%, have graduated, while 37% are still currently enrolled in a first year, second year, or third year training program. 63 of those 66, or 95%, fulfilled the program's mission, and 50 of 66 alumni, or 75%, continue to work in federally qualified health centers. And I want to take a pause here, because that really was the goal. The goal was, as stated previously, we wanted to get individuals to stay in these under-resourced communities. Oops, let's see here. Now, this here is what are the outcomes. Of the 59 of 66 alumni, 89% have California medical licenses. And that was the question that I needed to answer as well for 2066.5. And as with all programs, we did have 3 reasons that we don't have 100%. One individual failed USMLE Step 3. Back in the day, you could take USMLE Step 3 as many times as you needed to. In one case, one person took the test 4 times, took it 2 weeks apart, and that failed her out of ever getting a California license. We have proudly say we have one person who's serving in the Navy, which we felt did not necessarily meet California standards, but there are many individuals in the military that could benefit from our doctors' training. And finally, we had 5 individuals since the time of the program that are practicing out of state in Florida and Texas. Now, a couple more slides. Our future family physicians and community leaders, we said we wanted to give back to these communities. And this is just, we at the during the program, we really integrate individuals, and our friend, former board member Barbara Yaroslavsky, really felt that that was very important, that we have to learn community and teach community by being not just part of it, by actually volunteering. So we do that. This is our UCLA IMG Alumni Approach Association, which is promoting the program to candidates and the general public. It serves as a professional networking and for leadership development. This is just a picture of our 12 individuals who will be applying and are currently interviewing for family medicine residency programs here in California. And this final slide really is about this pilot program's retention and expansion strategies. And as I mentioned in the beginning, linking graduate medical education to service was very important. So the PRIME programs that are through the UCs for undergraduate medical education and graduate medical education are important. We need to have inspired leadership, faculty development, and building these programs. We were able to create a program in the Bakersfield area, Rio Bravo, that became a UCLA affiliate, and its first class began training in 2014. And I'm really excited, and I'm sorry that picture is so small. It's a beautiful picture of the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Hospital, where just starting in December, a clinic will be part of the hospital, whereby those very sick patients that are leaving hospital and not able to go maybe to their FQHC, and this is in support by the FQHCs, where our doctors from our program that are graduates will be there alongside subspecialists to serve this community. And finally, as I mentioned before, the professional development of our alumni is very important, and I really appreciate all that the medical board did, the Holly Mitchell, the folks at UCOP, Catherine Nation, and I think the big benefactor, of course, is the public, and I appreciate the time for this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Bolat. my understanding is that, this is for the members for the discussion and a motion, is that the program sunsets January 1, 2019.
Yes,
So there is a need for this board to see if it can work with the UC system to have the extension of the statute.
correct.
Is that- okay. Any questions to Dr. Bollard from, yes, sir, Dr. Hawkins?
Accommodations to the collaboration, and the foresight to try to contribute to solutions to underserved communities. What were some of the major impediments to the physicians staying in the area? Those that went through the entire system, one went to the Navy, others did one to Florida. What were the major impediments to physicians staying in those underserved communities?
I think, to be perfectly honest, for many, as professionals, we want to stay intellectually stimulated. And not having a group of doctors and other health care professionals that are able to raise the level of knowledge can be a big impediment. So, for example, there were many clinics that didn't have very basic things, up-to-date resources, meaning the up-to-date where you go online and look up medical information. So that was an impediment, not having the infrastructure to really be there and be part of the community. And the person who was in the Navy, she was in the Navy because she felt a service. She was an immigrant, and she felt that she wanted to give back to the community. And the other folks that went over to Texas, it was because two of those people didn't match in California. So rather than saying the heck with it, we worked very hard to get them in border states in El Paso. And the final thing I would say is, and this is a great, I think, case study, is what's going on with Martin Luther King Jr. Community Hospital. The inspired leadership through Elaine Batchelor and her team really had the foresight to say, look, these are communities that have been long overdue. We need to do something to fix it, and what we're going to do is we're going to create an environment where people are going to be so excited to come to work every day. And I can tell you, if you ever walk through that hospital, you feel it.
Dr. Kraus?
Dr. Bolat, congratulations.
Thank you.
Given the clear success of this program, are there discussions with other UC campuses for the potential of expanding the program?
Thank you for that question. This has been a long back and forth. So we have places up at UC Davis, UC San Diego, that are working towards different models and trying to take this proof of concept to practice. I think the challenge, Dr. Kraus, is what we all know that are in medical education. People don't want to fund it. And I think that's our biggest challenge. So my second job is working with philanthropy groups to say, do you want to invest? And, you know, if you're doing a great alumni association, I say, hey, let's start giving back. So it's a lot of hard work, and I don't know that people are making that investment in education, which is of major concern, I think, to all of us here on the board.
Dr. Bollard, thank you. It's a great program, and at minimum, it's a temporary fix. I think what we need in the end is we need 38% of California population is Latino. We need California students to really get into these medical schools, whether MD schools or DO schools or Caribbean schools, and go back to community and practice. I think that's the longer term goal. But what you're doing is wonderful. It fills a need. Unfortunately, because the number of Caribbean schools mushroomed, the number of DO schools increased tremendously, and even MD schools, there are about 16 new schools in the country. So it's, as an international graduate, getting into the country is becoming almost impossible.
That's right.
And this program helps the Latino, Spanish-speaking students to anywhere from American continent to really come and take care of it. So thank you. So with that, I would like a motion to approve the staff working with the UC Office of the President to seek legislation to extend this program.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any public comment? Any comments on the phone?
There are no comments at this time.
Ms. Stoof, roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat?
Aye.
Dr. Bishop? Aye. Judge Feinstein?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Wormuth?
Aye.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, thank you. Then we'll go to item number 20, Vertical Enforcement Program update from the HQIU. Mr. Chris and Ms. Nichols.
Good morning. My name is David Chris, and I'm the Chief of the Department of Consumer Affairs Division of Investigation. And this is Deputy Chief Kathleen Nichols. We will be providing an update on the division's Health Quality Investigation Unit. At the last meeting, we reported we had a plan to mitigate the investigator vacancy rate by supplementing investigative staff with 8 limited-term, non-sworn special investigator positions out of San Bernardino. I'm pleased to report that on October 3rd, 2016, 8 special investigators started work in the San Bernardino field office. During the week of October 17th, a mini academy was held and specific case-related training was provided to the new investigative staff. In addition, we have 3 limited-term special investigator positions in our Valencia field office and 4 limited-term special investigator positions in Sacramento. Interviews were held on October 17th for the Valencia candidates, and 3 positions were selected. We expect them to be able to start work within 30 days. Interviews for the Sacramento candidates will take place on November 1st. At the last meeting, we reported we were advertising 2 limited-term special investigator assistant positions, one in Pleasant Hill and one in Sacramento. The investigator assistant in Pleasant Hill was hired and started on October 17th. And the Sacramento investigator assistant was selected and is anticipated to start work within 30 days. With the added staff, our overall vacancy rate has decreased. These special investigator positions are limited term for 1 year with the option of extending to 2 years. This will be a good stopgap measure to maintain our ability to perform core functions while sworn staff progress through the background process. In the meantime, we continue to recruit and interview for our sworn vacancies. We are recruiting at other law enforcement agencies, law enforcement retirement associations, colleges, and police academies. As you know, a main component of the retention issue is related to inadequate pay. We currently have an HQIU retention pay proposal being evaluated by CalHR. We were recently asked to provide supplemental data to support our proposal, and the information was provided to CalHR this month. Retention pay for HQIU investigators is vital to our ability to retain and attract qualified applicants, and we are hopeful for a timely response from CalHR to address this important issue. The board has always been supportive of retention pay increase for HQIU investigators, and as we reach the end of this process, we need your continued support in implementing the retention pay. Effective October 1st, 2016, we reorganized the training unit of DFI, the Division of Investigation, and created a HQIU-specific specialized training unit. This new unit will be responsible for developing and implementing HQIU-specific case training for investigators statewide. It will also be responsible for the Field Training Officer Program for new investigators and oversee the supervision of the special investigators that have been recently hired. A commander position has been advertised, and we anticipate holding interviews within the next several weeks. HQIU staff participated in the expert training that was held on October 8th in San Francisco, and will be participating in the upcoming expert training in Los Angeles on November 5th. Joint training on subject interviews is being held for all HQIU investigators, medical consultants, and Deputy Attorney Generals from the Health Quality Enforcement Section of the Attorney General's Office on November 2nd in Northern California and November 9th in Southern California. We continue to communicate with the Attorney General's Office regarding process improvements and modifications to existing policies to streamline processes and improve investigative timelines. Even with all the challenges HQIU is facing, our staff is still completing exemplary work. Investigators from the Cerritos, San Dimas, Glendale, and OSM offices received 2016 U.S. Attorney's Office Law Enforcement Awards for their outstanding work on the Operation Fright Night criminal cases. These awards were presented to them last Friday in Los Angeles. They also received awards from the FDA for their outstanding teamwork. Operation Fright Night targeted retail stores that sold cosmetic and decorative contact lenses without prescriptions. Undercover investigators purchased the lenses, some of which were found to be contaminated with pathogens that cause eye injury, blindness, and potential loss to the eye. Under California law, retailers must be licensed by a physician, as a physician and a surgeon, optometrist, or a registered dispensing optician or pharmacist. I am proud of the high-quality work HQIU is performing, even with the challenges of an increased caseload. The solutions we have put in place will decrease vacancies and caseloads and improve investigative timelines. That concludes my update. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board members? Yeah, Ms. Wright, and then Dr. Lewis.
Thank you for all your hard work despite an increased caseload and obviously ongoing budget constraints. So you said you needed continued support for the retention pay. What additional can the board do to support you?
Well, we're waiting for the final approval from CalHR, but pending that, crossing our fingers, and we're hoping that moves forward. The pay would increase the budget, so we'd appreciate the board's support in funding that increase for our investigators.
Yeah, so what supports that would you like? That's what I'm asking.
To just meet with board staff and support, as we have through this process. I think it's been over a year that we've been trying to push this suggested retention pay through. And the board has been supportive at the previous meetings. We'd just like to have that continued support. Thank you.
That was exactly my question, because I heard you mention the word retention pay about a half a dozen times.
Yes.
We don't have a direct relationship to what CalHR and union contracts and anything. So all we can do as a board is ask you the question about how staffing is affecting the productivity. And through those kinds of issues and discussions, maybe someone in CalHR or elsewhere hears that, and maybe that's how we affect recruitment and retention. But for us to say, yeah, okay, we support retention, we don't have that direct ability. Now, I'm going to ask you a second question, and maybe you can answer, is that your sworn investigators have a job classification that has not changed or resulted in any increase in salary. Have you worked on trying to change their job classification to get them to stay and deal with the recruitment and retention issues that you are constantly having a problem with?
Yes, that has been suggested to our DCA HR department, and they're having discussions with CalHR in that regard as well. The retention pay process looked like it would be a faster route to have a noticeable effect with increased pay. The classification change could take an extended period of time.
But have you started that process
Yes.
in trying to change the classification? Because, there's no money in the budget. I mean, all the unions, everybody is having a problem with getting more money. It just isn't there. So, and even recruitment and retention just isn't there. We're all feeling that. So,
Correct, and through the collective bargaining process, there was some language that was actually written into this new contract that would allow the department to grant a retention pay with the support of the department and approval by CalHR. So I think it's been a series of long discussions with DCHR, with the board staff, and ultimately with CalHR. And I think we're ending we're getting very close to an answer one way or the other. So I think there's been positive steps along the way, and the board has continued to support us over time, and I'm hoping it will be resolved in the positive very shortly.
Yes, and if staffing has affected productivity,
Yes.
in what way?
As the vacancies go higher and there's less staff, the remaining investigators have to work additional cases. The caseload doesn't diminish. And so with more caseload, the pressure is higher, and so the timelines go farther on completion. And so that was one of the reasons why we had to put in play the non-sworn investigators, because they're able to be hired at a faster rate. There's no background and academy issues that take amount of time. It can take up to a year to get a sworn investigator hired, and so that's why we're putting these measures into play to try and decrease those caseloads and keep the bus moving forward until the sworn positions are filled.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Ms. Karchmeyer.
I just want to provide a little bit of clarification for the members so you understand how it impacts us. So as Mr. Chris stated, if the, currently, as of July, I believe the investigators got a 3% increase in their salary, which they just basically take our budget and increase it, what that salary rate would be. If they were to get a retention pay, depending on the percentage of what it would be, basically what we would be looking at is we'd have to increase our HQIU line item of our budget commensurate with what their increase in salary would be, because this is a little bit different. We don't pay an hourly rate. We pay basically for their staff. It's different than other boards that work with like the Division of Investigation, because they pay an hourly rate. As I've talked to Mr. Christ and Ms. Nichols, you know, that's something we have to go back and look at, because depending on the amount and the percentage, it may ultimately lead to a fee increase for the physicians, depending on our loan repayments. Obviously, our loan repayments have to be done, but with the other increases we've seen in our budget. So it's just one of those things we have to watch, and I've kind of discussed that with them, that we'll have to look at our budget and see the impact of what the increase for them would be for their retention pay to us. So that's where it impacts us. So you're right, Dr. Lewis, we can't help with the CalHR, but we just have to be prepared that once that does, if it goes through and takes effect, that we'll have to be prepared for our budget, because we're the ones that pay their salaries. And so that's where the board fits into all this. It's a unique
It is.
collaboration between the two of us.
Yes.
I was just going to say real quick, and part of the initial proposal was explaining that the board is actually already paying this money almost anyway, because with our repeated retention problem, we're paying a lot of money to hire people, train people, put them through the academy. That's all coming from the budget. And then because the salaries aren't enough, they leave. And then we repeat the process. So I think when, in terms of thinking about how much it costs, you really have to factor in, you're almost paying this money anyway because we keep turning people over. So if we could just add the money to retain people over time, you'll see less wasted money.
Thank you. Judge Feinstein.
Thank you. Admittedly, I come to the medical board with a bit of a different background, and I come with, you know, the overriding commitment of justice delayed is justice denied. And I become concerned when we are going through our discipline cases and we are disciplining physicians for what we determine to be misconduct that occurred in 2012 or 2014. And we don't know what happened between 2012 and today, or 2014 and today. Have they, you know, have things gotten worse? Have things gotten better? And I guess if my real question here is if there was two questions. If there was one thing that we could do, what would it be? And I'm playing off Dr. Lewis's question a little bit, because I'm not clear on all the relationships between the entities and the budget, but I'm also seeing that people can be harmed in 550 days is a very old case. If it were a criminal case, it would be dismissed for violating speedy trial rights. It's not, but I'm trying to really get a sense of, other than retention pay and hiring more people and reclassifying them, what can we do, and what's your goal? What do you need to have to clean up this backlog and be able to move cases forward more quickly, recognizing that they're complicated investigations?
The things that we're doing, there have been challenges, and the vacancy rate is high. The people who are sworn peace officers don't apply as readily to this position because of the pay. And so that has been a significant ongoing overtime issue for the medical board and recently for DOI. So in order to get around the delays and the challenges in hiring the peace officers, we've put these non-sworn positions into play as a stopgap measure. And so as we do that process, which is stopgap, and they're limited term for 1 year, and then with the extension, they could extend to 2 years. During that time, we'd like, ultimately, the goal is to have more pay for the investigators, attract those individuals with the skill sets and the training to these positions, and then hire and fill all those peace officer position, investigator positions, and that will reduce the timelines.
Okay, and how much is the differential? How much more money are you trying to offer your potential recruits?
We'd like is the amount that was in the proposal was 18%. Now, what the department and CalHR agrees to could be different. They have not communicated what the actual number is to us. And so we'd like 18%, and we're waiting to hear the results of that request.
And let's say we wave our magic wand and you're able to fill the investigators' positions and
Yes.
get them trained.
Yes.
Let's say from the day they hit the ground trained and running, how long is it going to take to get these cases to an acceptable backlog in terms of duration and number?
Yeah, I can't give a specific time, but that I think will improve as we move along, because the non-sworn investigators will be moving through that process as well. They'll be helping us while we're hiring the sworn investigators. So it's actually kind of a two-pronged approach. What the non-sworn investigators allow us to do is see if these individuals are interested in this line of work and how good they are at it. And if they like working for us and then they're doing a good job, it allows us to, as they're working for us, put that person into background for a sworn peace officer position. So it's kind of it's a two-pronged approach. Not only is it a stopgap measure, but it gives us the chance to look at these individuals, see if they're going to be successful, possibly in a sworn peace officer role, and then while they're actually doing work for us, they can go through the background process, which is very time-consuming, and like I had mentioned earlier, it lasts up to about a year. So both of these things can be happening at the same time, as we can be decreasing our workload and hiring sworn staff. So we're not at the end of the process by far, but I think we've got a running start on this thing, and we're putting some measures into play that haven't been done before. And I think they're very unique, and I like the approach. It also gives us the ability over time, even after the 2-year measures over for the limited term is we could explore with the board a non-sworn unit to be potential hires for the sworn peace officer positions in the future. So we're doing some things I think that, as I mentioned, are unique, but I think they'll help speed up that process. I can't say it'll be 4 months or 6 months or 8 months, but I do firmly believe that they will decrease the caseloads and thereby decrease the amount of time to complete a case.
Because the caseloads are really key to this solution, and typically for the complex cases, a reasonable caseload is about 10 to 15 cases of complex cases. Our investigators are running in the mid-40s right now. So when you think of what's causing the timelines, it really is a caseload issue. So as soon as we can retain the staff, hire the staff, keep them, those caseloads will come down, and then you'll see the faster turnaround times.
Dr. Levine?
So, Dr. Gnanadev is going to have to go to the legislature this fall and with our sunset review. And this issue and the movement of the investigators was subsequent to the 2012 sunset review. And he is likely to be asked, okay, so we did some things subsequent to 2012. What can you tell us now about the state of investigations and speed of closure compared to 2012, and what should he say?
The things that
We'll ask him to come with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to provide information as to the history. The vacancy rate has been an issue over a long period of time. There's a whole number of things that contributed to that, but I'd be more than happy to provide that history and
It's not about, no,
information.
it's not about history. My question isn't about history. My question is, looking back at 2012 and the data in 2012 and 2016, what is the legislature going to see in terms of length of investigation, speed of closure? And because I think we are together on the hook for explaining, where we are today and why there hasn't been more substantial improvement. And this is not a criticism, but I think this is a realistic assessment of what is going to be expected in terms of the legislature saw a real problem, they took action, and they want to know what the consequences have been.
And I feel that I can speak to that directly. I'd be more than happy to come to Sunset and talk about it. The timelines over time beginning before that have gone significantly higher. And I think it is due to, many factors. The most significant factor being retention and retention pay issues associated with that.
Can you give us, I appreciate that, can you give us some sense today, the board, of where we are compared to where we were in 2012?
The vacancy rate was as high as 38% and that was significant, which drove the case completion times up significantly. And it took a period of time to put these things into play, these stopgap measures, but with the hiring of this most recent staff and with staff going into the first few weeks of November, we'll actually bring that number down to 17%. So it will take some time on the other side of these new hires to see those numbers come down, but I'm confident that that will take place. So, I can't speak to how long it's going to take. I would see an immediate result, because what you're doing is you're taking numbers from the investigators that we currently have and then giving some of those cases to the new hires. And so that will have a direct result.
Can you give us some sense of what, I realize accurate.
Do you have suggestions on numbers?
Just some sense of timeframes where you begin to see
Right, well,
a change.
to give a picture, currently, we have 28 sworn vacancies. So if each of those 28 people were working a caseload, that would be astronomical help to reducing the timeline. So I think there is a solution to this problem, and it's retaining the investigator so that we don't keep flipping them over and over and over again. And once that happens, with a normal caseload, we will see good timelines. This is something that can happen.
Yeah, the ideal caseload is from about 10 cases to 15 cases. Right now, every time an investigator leaves to go to a higher paying job, that person's caseload, which is over 40, gets distributed to the remaining staff. And it just makes it increasingly difficult to keep the timelines down when the amount of work that they have is so high. And so, putting these measures into play will decrease that, and then as we hire more sworn staff, those numbers will come down. But we're not at the end of the process. I think we're in the middle, and so it's frustrating, but we are doing proactive things, very proactive things to address this. And I'd like to be able to report at the next board meeting some significant number increases.
Yeah, Mr. Chris, Dr. Bishop, I'll come to you. Entire healthcare industry has budget problems. Doesn't mean that we can't see patients. Doesn't mean that we have a serious nursing shortage. Hospitals still have to run. Someone has to take care of. We do. I don't see a reason why we can't do it at the medical board. That's what aggravates me. There is no action to really see how we can improve the process. I understand your vacancies, but we need to have a process improvement where we can make it shorter. I mean, that's Judge Feinstein is right. I mean, no action taken is actually disservice to people who are on there, both for the patients, who somebody might be hurting them, and for the doctor, who can be just let go or only with a public letter of reprimand. That person has to wait 4 or 5 years. So both ways it's bad. So what I suggest is I'll ask my staff to work with, we will participate, some board members can participate too, is how can we improve the process? I understand your vacancy rate and all that, but there has to be a process improvement, and it's a continuous process in the healthcare industry. That's what we do. Otherwise, we can't handle the workload after the ACA. The volume went up tremendously, but we still do it. So we have no choice. Dr. Bishop?
Deb, you know I have great respect for you, but I have to respectfully disagree with most of what you just said. I would say, I've been on this board for many years, and those of you who followed me knows that I speak my mind, and I've heard this same response, this same badgering of people. These people are being badgered again today. I'm sorry, but I believe they are. It's not their fault. This system is broken. It's been broken from the start. The answer has been clear for many years. They've come up here before us on multiple occasions, said we have a huge vacancy rate. Deb, I'm sorry, but I can only do so many cases, and you can't just drop, cut my hours from 12 to 2 and say doing the same number of cases. It's just not possible as an anesthesiologist, and doctors can't do it either. And I don't know how to get the message across to the people that need to do this. Can we possibly invite some of the legislators to sit in with the meeting next time? Have them listen to the public, have them listen to these people, have them listen to us, because they don't. I mean, the transfer of people to the Department of Justice was something that was cheap. It didn't make any difference at all. It has not changed anything significantly. The answer is clear. They've told us again and again. How many more times and what other ways can they tell us? They need people. You can only run the plane if it has gas in the engine. It's going to crash in the middle of the ocean if it doesn't. It needs to be fixed. I don't know how it's to be fixed. That's my opinion. I just have to tell you the way I see it. We just don't have an answer other than that. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Dr. Bishop. Actually, you can also do the process improvement. There is a way to do so. Jamie?
I hate to badger you. I'm going to give you this hypothetical, and I need you to answer me like I'm the legislator, because the medical board gets the flack. we do. They're going to say we're inefficient, we're ineffective. Why have you not decreased these numbers? I don't want to hear your data. Why is the medical board, I'm the legislator and I'm talking to you because they're always not so friendly to us. Answer me like I'm the legislator and you're explaining to me why this hasn't happened without completely saying data and vacancies. What is there, how can you explain it so they understand some of this is about the broken system? I think that's what everyone's trying to hear in terms of between 2012 and 2016, why nothing has changed. So talk to me in a vacuum like I'm giving you the hypothetical.
Yeah, you know, there are the issues that you mentioned, vacancies and pay and associated issues. And then we have been working diligently to streamline the process with the Attorney General's office. And that, the vertical enforcement system is a part of this. And we've been working with them diligently to try and reduce those timelines and streamline the process as much as we can under the existing law. We've made 4 adjustments to the agreed-upon matrix between us since January of this year. And those are the things that we can change. And the existing statute prevents us from addressing vertical enforcement or making further suggestions beyond, what we've done. But we meet with them frequently, and we discuss every time that we see something that could, speed things up. We talk with them and try and put things into play, and we've made some of these adjustments. I mentioned about 4 of them since January. But we would appreciate, any help regarding vertical enforcement and the process. It does take longer, but we would appreciate any help from the Attorney General's office, a modification of the statute, and anything to try and move this process along.
That's what I was kind of looking for when I said, okay, what additional support? And then with the follow-up questions, you were giving us back the kind of vacancy and data, but there's many partners that are causing this problem. So I just wanted to hear it directly. And so thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Ms. Kashmar will give some numbers so that we can see what we're talking.
So I just pulled out the board's annual report. So in 12-13, we were at 260 days for our investigation process. In 13-14, we were at 245. And then the switchover happened in July of 14, and it went up to 310 days. And the next number I'm going to give you is, now we've really split out the way we've gathered the statistics, but then in 15-16, the number that we're going to, I think, be putting in our annual report is 426. So it's been a steady increase, but I want to speak on a little bit on behalf of Kathleen and David, because I don't think that they're giving you the full push of, we had a recent meeting, the 3 of us, and the changes that they're making with these non-sworn positions going into the quasi-sworn position spot, when we really talked this out and how they're going to be taking over a lot of the workload, and they're going to be doing the less complex cases just like Ms. Delp's unit does. They're going to be pulling those cases, and I think the value of having those individuals learn about the enforcement process and the investigation process, and then if those individuals, some of the individuals they're hiring, have already a law enforcement background. So they've thoughtfully hired individuals. Those individuals, if they can actually transfer then, if they're the best qualified candidate, into a sworn position, the benefit of that is going to be that these individuals are actually going to be working for the board, doing the cases while the background is going, which we've never, ever had in the past. So the whole plan that they actually have right now, if it comes to fruition, I think we will see an improvement from where we are right now, because I think we'll be able to fill sworn positions, hopefully, but we also have people who are working right now. And this is something I've talked to Kathleen and David about, is like, maybe we take some of those positions and we make them automatically a non-sworn position. They're still working the vertical enforcement process with the attorney generals, even though those positions are there. So we're not avoiding VE or anything. We still have the AG's office working alongside of them. It's just in the non-sworn capacity. If we keep some of them, maybe this is our training ground for bringing up our investigators. And it's a lot better to have them working for the DCA, doing our cases while we're waiting for them to do that background. So I do think I've been very impressed with the recent plan that they have to fill the position. So I'm just going to come to their aid a little bit because I do think that their plan, it's the best that I've seen for a very long time for how we're going to try to get out of the hole that we're kind of in as far as investigation. So
And I also wanted to point out something else that's in the Sunset Report that's very telling, is that this last year, 15-16, there were 37 ISOs versus the year before, when we didn't have as many vacancies, there were 14. So we've more than doubled the amount of ISOs. We are doing more with less, and I think we are seeing great results from our staff to protect the public, even with the vacancies.
Ms. Nichols, I will be thrilled to take you with me when I go to the BNP committee. And basically let them know this is what they're doing, not our doing. So we'll be very, very careful, but we'll let them know if they bug us. So, but Mr. Warmer?
Actually, I think my question was just answered. I agree that, this is not something we should be badgering you about. We're in this together, that, we have an issue. And I thought the original question was, are we better, worse, or worse than we were in 2012? And I don't think we got a clear answer to that. Right. But we do now have that, and we know, at least going into when we have to go in front of the Assembly and the Senate, we know this is the situation, and we need to have a plan to turn it around.
Thank you. And actually, Kim did mention the process improvement I was talking about. So we got to continuously look at within what we have. There is not much you can do with the bureaucracy and the process, how long it takes to take care of why those vacancies cannot be filled or why it takes so long. But in the meantime, we do have to improve the process. I can't go say, well, we went from 260 to 400 something. That just looks like, what's wrong with these people? What do they run? I mean, so that's really very, very discouraging. Judge Feinstein.
No, I just want to say I absolutely agree, and I think, I hope I wasn't badgering you. I hope it was badgering you.
I'll take the blame any day, anyway.
I mean, I think the way that you've actually dealt with this is the best way you can deal with it at this point. But I do think you need to use us to put some pressure on the legislature, and, we may need to become more publicly active in really, bringing the citizenry forward, because they're the ones that are impacted by this and by the delay. And, reading the cases, I see the work that goes in. I mean, it's very substantial. And I see the knowledge that these investigators need to have to prepare these reports. So I have absolutely no criticism of the quality of the work, because I think it's exemplary. But it's the time. It's the time. And, maybe they're I don't know what the process is administratively, but, it may be time to launch a campaign.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the members? If not, I have one public comment slip. Marian Hollingsworth.
Hello, my name is Marian Hollingsworth, and I'm speaking as a private citizen now. Regarding the backlog of cases, does transferring a case to a different district office actually help to speed up the process?
Kathleen.
We've actually done that quite a bit. So we keep an eye on the caseloads and we move the cases around every day to make sure everybody has an equal amount.
Okay, but the reason I asked is because my case was transferred from San Diego
Ms.
to San
Hollingsworth,
Bernardino, and it still took.
Ms. Hollingsworth, please direct the comments to the board. They will answer afterwards.
Okay, all right, thank you. My point is, my case was transferred to a different district office. It was transferred to San Bernardino because I was told that they were understaffed here in San Diego. And it still took 3 years and 2 months, which is over 1,100 days. So for Judge Feinstein referring to the justice delayed, that was really difficult for my family. And then I'm sure for the doctor involved too, to have that in a state of limbo for over 3 years. And I have been watching the medical board for over 2.5 years now, which is kind of a small time compared to many of you. But it seems like this is a chronic complaint that they're constantly understaffed. And I would encourage the board to get after the legislators. I know I will be getting after them to hire more people. It just seems like when we have a state of some 38 million people and we can't find positions that are, rather, highly trained. It seems like it shouldn't be that hard to find that many intelligent people in California to take care of this thing. And regarding the issue of statutes, complainants have a 7-year statute in some case, 3 years in other cases, and it would be nice if the medical board would have some time of limit so complainants can expect their cases to be closed within a certain window, not, definitely by the day, but a certain window would definitely help us. And it would help give the medical board, gain the confidence of the people of California, because right now there's not a whole lot of confidence, and I think it would help for both sides so that we would be able to understand each other better and have more confidence in the system. So it won't be broken. So, thank you.
Thank you. Julie? Yeah, please, come on. I was wondering, you were so quiet. How come Ms.
I'm
Hellmuth hasn't
just a
come?
little mouse. Julie D'Angelo Felmuth from the Center for Public Interest Law and the former Medical Board Enforcement Monitor. I've been attending medical board meetings for 30 years, and I have heard this exact problem repeated for 30 years. We have sponsored dozens of bills to tweak and make major changes to the medical board's enforcement program. One of them in 1990, I believe, was Senate Bill 2375, Presley. And in that bill, the legislature included intent language that the people who investigate cases for the medical board should be paid the same as special agents in the Department of Justice. Those are the investigators employed directly by the Attorney General's office. That was included in a bill in 1990. This is 2016. That has never happened, ever. You're getting the closest that I've ever heard anybody get to it. But that's who you have to, that's the issue here. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, why we have pushed for many, many years to have the investigators transferred into the Department of Justice so that they would enjoy that pay increase. That's the key problem, in my view. And the legislature made its intent clear in 1990. It's just that the folks in the executive branch have never come through on it. And so I urge this board to do anything in its power to make that vision of the legislature expressed in 1990 come true.
History matters.
Thank you, Julie. As usual, always we learn something from you. Any other public comment? Any comments on the phone?
No, sir, there are no comments at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chris and Ms. Nichols. Hopefully next time you go as better timelines and more investigators working for you. Next one is item 21, vertical enforcement program update. Ms. Castro.
Good morning, honorable board members. First off, we'd like to congratulate you, Dr. Gnanadev. You have great respect and admiration from my staff. You always seem to be able to have a fine balance between your duties to the profession and the duties to the public. And we are very much looking forward to working with you. I believe that you and Ms. Kirchmeier are a very strong team, especially as we head into the sunset review process. The Attorney General's office is committed to helping you in any way that we can. And we're also very committed to our partners in HQIU. And it is true what Mr. Chris and Kathleen Nichols have just expressed. I believe that since January, we have enjoyed a very collegial relationship. We have been able to be given part of the steering wheel as it relates to legal processes. We have given back some of the issues that are investigator only. And I believe we have a great amount of synergy. And one of the struggles is that right when you're getting very used to working, for example, with the medical board and trying to work out kinks and efficiencies, we had to encounter this big change. The big change was the transfer to HQIU. And in the meantime, now we're seeing these efficiencies and we're struggling obviously with the vacancies. And I don't need to express anymore how difficult these cases are and how high complexity case. It deserves a sworn investigator, and it certainly deserves more pay. And with that, I'll just leave that one alone. I think it's been discussed enough. So HQE agrees with the mission and intent of the legislation establishing the vertical enforcement program, notwithstanding the challenges of the program not being implemented as envisioned and the subsequent fragmentation. Our staff has always been very passionate about the V program and the protection it affords the public by involving the lawyers to ensure the quality of the evidence produced to be used in the disciplinary prosecution of physicians. We also believe very strongly in our role to grab that physician out of the cloud of suspicion earlier so he or she can go back to their profession, which is to take care of patients. And obviously, we are very, very committed to the patients who have entrusted you with their complaint and with their privacy in order that they can, through their experience with this physician, help the public at large and help you identify those physicians that need to be rehabilitated and those that shouldn't be rehabilitated and be given a little bit of a timeout. The vast majority of our staff worked on your cases before vertical enforcement was implemented 11 years ago, including myself. And we can tell you that hands down, the vertical enforcement program is a superior way to investigate these important life and death cases. The prior model of lawyers and investigators working in silos did not work very well for this licensed profession. And I think that the legislature has recognized that by the separate institution of the Health Quality Enforcement Section in 1990 and its subsequent legislation to establish Health Quality Investigation Unit. If the legislature wants us to work faster, HQIU obviously needs more money or more positions. And we're happy to help with whatever evidence you need to establish those things. With the Complaint Investigation Office keeping about 300 investigations a year, the lowest level of complexity, and being directed by a lead prosecutor, we have been left with cases that should be VE'd being sent to HQIU. With HQIU recently shedding 2 of my other clients, we hope to see some investigations moving forward. And we are very supportive of Kathleen and David's initiative to create these non-sworn units in Valencia and in San Bernardino. We believe it will create a pipeline of commitment and training such that once they are trained, they can go into those sworn positions and already hit the ground running. We will step up to help HQIU train their staff to reduce timelines and do our part. In the subject interview realm, as you heard, we have embarked on another joint training. We will be completing those trainings in the next 2 weeks of DAGs and investigators. And we are doing our part by identifying cases that do not require DAGs to attend subject interviews, such that we don't add to the burden of timelines. We, on average, participate in investigations about 2.5 hours, and mostly we touch the case and the most important aspects of it. Subject interview, or at least framing questions for inquiry, expert selection, expert report review, and then the ultimate and most important decision, which is whether or not this physician is going to have an accusation filed against him or her. The vast majority of cases are closed. We are not happy with the timelines, and we are working nights and weekends to be able to address cases that are coming up on statute, cease practice orders, which have increased exponentially. We're working with Judge Alver to help us identify that at Office of Administrative Hearings And also, Office of Administrative Hearings is seeing the impact of the increased ISOs, interim suspension orders. And even though you have given them more positions in the past, 3 years, I anticipate that they may need even more judges to be able to handle the onslaught of the success of your program, which was Breeze, which invited more patients into the fold to be able to complain. We welcome that workload, but there is a balance between quality and quantity and effectiveness and how they relate to each other. More recently, our Supervising Deputy Attorney General Matthew Davis contributed to the collegial and productive pursuit of quality in investigations, and we thank Laura Gardhouse in that regard. She's a supervising investigator, too, who put together the subject interview training. Also in this quarter, Supervising Deputy Attorney General Matt Davis assisted in the annual Medical Board Expert Reviewer Training, and we thank Ms. Delp and Ms. Kirchmeier for allowing us to participate in that important program. The quality of your cases, the foundation rests on the quality of experts. We have, I have shifted all of my lead prosecutors. I'm sending more of them out to the field. Previously, we had 2 field offices assigned to 1 lead prosecutor. Because of the issues that I anticipate in the next 6 months with these timelines and things coming up on statute, I am assigning my Deputy Attorney General 5s, 1 each to each office, and they're going to start pleading cases as soon as possible. I want to stress that Kathleen, David, and I are always identifying high priority cases. So those are not falling anywhere. Those are identified, those are the interim suspension orders, and we find a way to put the public on notice as soon as possible if a physician is causing concern. And this is also reflected in the parallel proceedings protocol. When David and Kathleen's staff are investigating something criminally, we try to get as many resources as possible to address the licensing issues. Even if it means not going to trial while we wait for a criminal case to be done, we are trying to work hand in glove to make sure that our patients are aware of these physicians that they should take a second look at. In addition to shifting lead prosecutors, we continue to seek avenues for continued collaboration and improvement with our investigation partners at HKIU. We have been starting to identify cases that are going to trial, and in order to have investigators, hopefully as part of their training, especially this new non-sworn unit, for existing investigators and non-sworn new staff to see the fruit of their labors, and most importantly, for hands-on training and the quality of the evidence and how it's presented and assessed by experts, by ALJs, and by other witnesses and opposing counsel. These are very, very heavily litigated cases. This is not just a privilege, this is a property right. These doctors have worked very hard to achieve their medical license. And when we go to trial, the evidence and the quality of it is where it matters. And you obviously see us every quarter, and you understand that very well as the board. We're also exploring efficiencies with subpoena legal review. Together with Kathleen, we created a pilot project, and we're ready to probably roll it out at the end of November. And this will assist her investigators to be able to move those subpoena service and then subpoena enforcement. This is where a doctor, a patient hasn't signed a release. We have to serve a subpoena to get the records, and we're encountering some trouble. We need to pretty much get on those medical record acquisitions, because those are one of the issues that affect timelines. And in the past year and a half, we have had many subpoena enforcement cases because we responded to Kim's request. And she was absolutely right that this is not inexcusable, that it stops a case. Doctors that don't pay attention to what their board requires of them should not be rewarded by cases just kind of falling through the cracks. We need to hold their feet to the fire. And obviously, when you do that, you have cases, and you heard from Ms. Webb yesterday that these cases are getting litigated and they're going to the Court of Appeal, and that's fine, because you as the board with Ms. Kirchmeier and Jennifer can go to the legislators and address whatever changes and tools you can give to us to be able to get you what it is that you need. And that concludes this agenda item, which is my vertical enforcement report.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Thanks for the kind words. Unfortunately, HQIU is the one who is on our radar now, but not AG's office. So we are okay right now. So I just, it's in the end though, I think we need, all three of us need to work together. Used to be two only, that's board and the AG's office. Now we got a third entity, DCA, coming into play. Goal is same. We have to cut it down to below 200. That's it. I mean, there is no ifs, no buts. It's unfair, both to the patients, our consumers of California, and to the doctors. So somehow or other we got to get there, whatever it takes. So, Judge Feinstein.
Let me ask a couple questions here, because as I think I've expressed at a prior meeting, I've been involved with vertical enforcement models in different situations throughout my career. And I found that they actually exist more on paper than they do in reality. And I'm wondering if you're able, I mean, not today, but to provide us with some numbers regarding cases that actually begin with the same investigator and the same DAG, and end with the same investigator and the same DAG. Because unless that is occurring, it's not vertical enforcement. And, trading from one person to another ends up with your having to have the new DAG get up to speed. Same thing for investigators. The new investigator has to get up to speed. And I do think there's obviously a need in case preparation or whatever to work together, but given the slowness that has come with vertical enforcement, I'm not sure, I know it's the law, but I'm not sure it's a law that shouldn't be changed. And I think for example, your pilot project on the subpoena process, I got to be honest with you. We did a case yesterday that ended up being dismissed, in which the DAG had filed a discovery motion for necessary evidence 4 months before the hearing date, and never obtained the evidence, didn't have the evidence to move forward, and took no action to enforce the discovery order in a 4-month period. And that's no enforcement. That's not a matter of vertical or non-vertical. And legally, there's nothing else there was no evidence. I mean, it was just, it wasn't even debatable that it was a case that could proceed. And, although these things all sound good, vertical enforcement has been the buzzword in the justice community for 15 or 20 years, I have yet to see it work, and I'm yet to be convinced that it's working here. And it may well be hindering us, and it may be that we need to start looking at other ways to deal with these cases in a more efficient way, because it seems to be slowing us down.
And I'll have to get that case name from you, Kim, the one that Judge Feinstein just mentioned. I don't know if that's a vertical enforcement case, first of all. If we're having difficulty with evidence at trial.
No, please, let me make it clear. I understand what difficulty with evidence at trial is. I don't understand what the point is of filing a motion and then letting it sit for 4 months and not taking any steps to seek enforcement, so you don't have any evidence. So
I'll look into that.
let me just make that clear. I mean, I'm not overly impressed with, I'm not overly impressed yet, okay? Hopefully that'll come.
One thing that I do need to point out is that this is not vertical enforcement as envisioned by the legislature to begin with. The enforcement monitor recommended the same model that is already in my office in the Bureau of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse, and the process that is at the California State Bar, which is vertical enforcement where both investigators and attorneys work for the same captain. And we're on the same ship. We may be on different floors, different satellite office, but there's no question that you have the same boss. We were not given that option more than 10 years ago when we requested that the investigators come to the Department of Justice, and it had great support by this board. And that did not occur for reasons that I am not privy to. There was another suggestion made, which I personally did not agree with, and that was to remove the investigators from Ms. Kirchmeyer and Renee Threadgill and send them over to the Department of, the DOI, the Department of Investigations at the Department of Consumer Affairs, injecting now a third party into an already tenuous process. So not only did we not start with VE, we got farther away from it. And that is what we are seeing in the last 4 years. When I was asked by a consultant at the Senate BNP what my opinion was, I said, leave them at the medical board if you're not going to send them to the California Department of Justice, because I think things are working very well. I think we have implemented many improvements in this relationship, and it's working the best that I've ever seen it work. That didn't occur, and I've been, for the past almost 4 years, and even prior to that when I was a supervisor, trying to address any efficiencies that we could come into this already imperfect process. So it's a hybrid vertical enforcement program. I would not crucify an entire system based on this experience here, because I just don't think it would be fair to what was envisioned by the enforcement monitor, who is here and can certainly comment on that. I don't need to put words in her mouth, but I do know what I've read, and I know what was supported by Attorney General Bill Lockyer, and I believe it was Liz Figueroa, if I'm not mistaken. And as your lawyer, I can only do what I can with the system that we are given. I think that the vertical enforcement statute, as written, has been interpreted by both David Chris and Awit Kadani at the Department of Consumer Affairs, and AG Kamala Harris and myself. And the vertical enforcement manual speaks to all the different efficiencies. And I'm excited to say that Ms. Nichols and I have meet quite frequently and have already even made an already efficient program as best as we could, even more efficient. The issue obviously is the vacancies. When the investigators were sent to the Department of Consumer Affairs, Department of Investigations, they encountered another half of an investigative unit that don't deal with these high complexity matters, do not have to deal with attorneys and very sophisticated doctors and very, very talented opposing counsel. They are getting paid exactly the same.
I know that.
And they're looking over this wall to the other side of the unit, which does excellent work. My office works with them too. We don't vertically enforce those cases. We just don't see the value of vertically enforcing a smog repair shop or a pesticide control. Very important, you know, the cars and roaches, very important, but hopefully neither one will kill you. But the patient safety concerns here are such that the legislature recognized the importance of it. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I have to say that I agree with Kathleen Nichols and David Chris that if you are to retain folks, if they cannot be special agents, they need either a retention issue so that it makes it worth to stay. Because right now, they are getting punished with more work. I don't want to say less pay, but
Less pay.
less pay.
Yeah, this is what the discussion needs to be, yeah.
And the bottom line is, they've reached the bottom of their passion bucket, and passion is just not going to get you where you need to go. And with that, I think I've said enough, unless I missed.
No,
any-
no, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Actually, it's Dr. Louis, I'll come back to you. Thank you for actually being straightforward and letting us know. And you basically said what we feel. So we have, unfortunately, it's our people we got mad at because they got transferred somewhere else. But we still look at these people as our people, so. But anyway, Dr. Lewis.
And there are partners, too. We consider them teammates.
Yeah,
Dr. Lewis.
Ms. Castro, this is the first time, and I congratulate you on your passion in your presentation just now. It's the first time I've heard you really explain to this group the essential problem with this vertical enforcement. I don't know about the others. I have never heard this before. I'm thinking, God, we hear the same thing every board meeting and from all of you, and this is the first time you've really gotten down into the root of the problem. I mean, these investigators are not making any more money. They're doing a hell of a good job and a lot of work. And CalHR is not, changing anybody's job classification. And when they moved to Department of Investigation, I don't know if they were promised more money, but obviously they didn't get any more money. Who is going to stay in a job? I mean, the morale must be awful. I'll go work for roach control. Or cosmetology or something. Oh, you're doing cosmetology, I'm doing roach control.
Yeah.
So thank you for really presenting the crux of the problem, and I hope the legislators are hearing this, and maybe there's a correction that needs to be made somehow. Yes, we're all partners, and, you don't really, we all want to work together, and hopefully we're kind of stuck with this, and we try to make it work the best we can. But if it's if it's not, we're not able to fix it, then go on to something else, and maybe go back to the way it originally was.
And the something else
working.
was called the Deputy in District Office Program. And that's what we got rid of in 2005.
Yeah.
And I will say this, that I'm much more verbose in front of the Enforcement Committee, and Dr. Yip has heard a lot of that. And sometimes my comments don't get summarized for the sake of space, obviously. So I apologize if I haven't not been very vocal before the full committee, but Ms. Kirchmeier can tell you, I've been very vocal in front of the Enforcement Committee. And Dr. Kraus, looking at you as well.
But thank you for that.
Any other comments? Any public comment? Comments on the phone?
Yes, we have a comment from the line of Ludmila Barada. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I would like to comment about the issue of vertical enforcement. We filed a complaint against Dr. Elizabeth Ana Calvelli after a series of misdiagnoses for my husband. Mario
Excuse me, is
Guzman,
this a current complaint?
a healthy,
Excuse me.
well, was by doing a
We can't talk about a complaint that may come before the board. You can speak in generalities, but not about a specific complaint.
Okay, I will make it general then. We submitted a complaint, and this complaint was examined by the California Medical Board, and they did find that this doctor acted below the standard of care. And then the matter was sent to the Attorney General's office for disciplinary action, and then a few months later, we were told that it was closed due to insufficient evidence. We submitted multiple requests to Mr. Refuge, which was our investigator, Mr. David Mercer at the Office of the Attorney General, and Mrs. Kamala Harris. And to this date, we have not received a formal explanation as to why a case that has been reviewed by a prosecutor from the Attorney General's office was ultimately shelved, especially in considering the severity of this case. My husband, who was a triathlete, is now a multiple amputee, and nobody is responsible. Mrs. Kirchmeier may be aware of who we are. She was interviewed by NBC Bay Area this past May about the failings of the California Medical Board to discipline this doctor, among many others. At least she did agree to show on camera, only to tell us what we already knew, that in California, the statute to prosecute a doctor are immense to begin with, a fact that allows many incompetent and even criminal physicians to continue practicing with a clean record. Vertical enforcement has been found to have reduced the amount of disciplinary actions given by the board even further. According to your own data, of 8,267 complaints made by consumers, only 444 resulted in any sort of disciplinary action. There is an abysmal rate of 95% of complaints closed without any sort of accountability or transparency. Not only that, but the bulk of those so-called disciplinary actions are the same as letters of public reprimand, which in no way limit the doctor's ability to see and practice on patients. The decisions made by this board during the years have always puzzled me, particularly considering that they're supposed to be a consumer protection agency. As victims, we don't get a modicum of respect. A wall of silence surrounds the intricacies of these cases. My husband spent months in the hospital, powerless while his limbs rotted and died. And this board considers it okay that a doctor that is unable to do something as basic as to determine when antibiotics are needed on a patient should be kept on the job, treating hundreds, if not thousands of patients every year. Mrs. Kirkmeyer, I never got a survey from your office. I wonder why. It required a TV cruise to get non-answers from the board and the Attorney General's office. At this point in time, we have more transparency in our pickup.
Please wrap up. Your time is up.
The doctors that make life and death decisions for us, and we have no one to thank but all of you for that. Thank you.
And please,
Thank you.
Please contact Chief of Enforcement Christina Delp so that additional information can be obtained from you.
Any other comments on the phone?
There are no other comments on the phone at this time.
Yeah.
We believe that there's another comment that should have come in earlier and they weren't able to get through. Is that still the case on the telephone?
It has just now come to my attention, and we have a question. We have a comment from the line of Eric Andrist. Go ahead.
I can get this done.
Hi, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to do it now or if you wanted me to move it down to number 26, because it's kind of not on number 21.
Now is fine.
Okay, I'm going to talk fast to get it all in. I would like to request that the board place this matter on agenda and investigate how certain staff members have been breaking the law and violating the terms of the California Public Record Act. The fundamental rules of the CPRA is that government records shall be disclosed to the public upon request unless there is a specific reason not to do so. Most of the reasons for withholding a disclosure of record are set forth in specific exemptions contained in the CPRA, which also provides a general balancing test by which an agency may withhold records from disclosure. If it can establish that the public interest in non-disclosure clearly outweighs the public interest in disclosure. In the manual titled Summary of the CPRA from the Attorney General's Office, it clearly states two important things. One, when an agency withholds a record because it is exempt from disclosure, the agency must notify the requester of the reasons for withholding the record. And two, agencies should provide a sufficient explanation of the reasons for withholding records so that the public can decide whether to challenge the agency's withholding. GC 6254D states, nothing in these chapters shall be construed to permit an agency to delay or obstruct the inspection of copying of public records. GC 6253A states, any reasonable segregable portion of a record shall be available for inspection by any person requesting the record after deletion of the portions that are exempt by law. Terry Webb uses the CPRA as a blanket refusal to refuse documents in their entirety instead of redacting the portions that are exempt and sending the rest, which is in violation of the law. I have filed probably a good dozen Public Record Act requests with Terry and Christina, and only a couple have actually been fulfilled. Even the ones they did fulfill were done so with errors. For instance, I requested a copy of the manual of the board is given when they first start their term, and Christina Delp instead sent me the entire copy of the Central Complaint Unit manual that the medical staff uses. An agency only has 10 days to reply to a Public Records Act request, and yet I can account for a number of my requests that have gone past the 10 days allowed or have not been answered at all. I sent my first request to Kerry Webb on April 28th, and it has never been responded to. On October 5th, I sent a Public Record Act request, so the deadline answer became October 15th. By October 18th, I still had not heard from Kerry and emailed to let her know. She replied by stating that she had taken it upon herself to change my request from a Public Records Act request to an Informational Practices Act request without consulting me. Doing so, she thought, gave her 30 days instead of the required 10 days allowed by the CPRA. She was wrong, and I sent her proof that my request was a valid Public Records Act request. As usual, when she's been proven wrong,
Please
she
wrap
just
up.
stops responding at that point. I've also CC'd and brought these important matters up to Kimberly Kirchmeier, who has never once responded to me or addressed the problems. She just allows Carrie and Christina to regularly break the law. So again, I'm asking that the matter of the Public Records Act request be studied by the board, and I must insist that the law be followed, not skirted. Any questions you might all have, Carrie has my email address. And someone also needs to monitor Twitter for live.
Sir, your time is up.
Public viewing. There's been a lot of problems with the teleconferencing this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the phone?
No, not at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Next one is yours, AG's office.
I'll be brief. My Attorney General's report is pleased to let you know that we have 2 new Deputy Attorney Generals in San Diego. Ms. Rosemary Luzon joins us from a very high-profile law firm and has had very great successes in civil litigation and pharmaceuticals. We hope to be able to utilize her talents with our pharmaceutical cases, our overprescribing cases. Our second hire is Deputy Attorney General Giovanni Mejia. He joins us from New York State. He has 3 different state bar licenses, so if you ever get sued out of state, I know who I'm sending. And he is very talented and comes from a New York prosecutor's office. I am pleased to announce that I am currently onboarding 6 paralegals into the Health Quality Enforcement section. They will all be assisting with the reliability, completeness, and accuracy of the Attorney General's data collection in compliance with SB 467, Business and Professions Code Section 312.2. As a reminder, this is the statute that will impart on us the data obligations to allow you and the legislature and the public and any other interested parties to know our timelines where we own the clock on administrative cases. This type of infusion of staff helps the board in the long run because you actually don't want to be using deputy attorney generals to crunch numbers and enter data. You want them out there prosecuting doctors and closing investigations for doctors that should not be prosecuted. And with that, I will conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Any questions from the board? Any public comment? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is update on discussion on possible action of recommendations from the Midwifery Advisory Council. Ms. Parwan.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm going to be really brief because you've all read my report already, right? All right. So some of the highlights from the last Midwifery Advisory Council meeting, which was held on August 18th, 2016, included the selection of a new licensed midwife, Diane Holzer, to fill the seat on the MAC that was vacated by Karen Ehrlich. We're delighted to have Ms. Holzer. Her expertise will be quite valuable, and I highly recommend her for your confirmation in the next agenda item. We also heard updates on regulations pursuant to AB 1308 and formed a task force to assist, hopefully, in getting the parties to come to some agreement about what ought to be on the list of reasons why a licensed midwife should refer a particular client to a physician. I need your approval on the following agenda items for the next MAC meeting in December. Task force update on the licensed midwife annual report and changes to that. An update on continuing regulatory efforts required by Assembly Bill 1308. An update on the hospital transfer form. Update on the midwifery task force that I just spoke about. Update on midwifery-related legislation expected to be introduced or followed during the next year. The update on the midwifery program and the progress of the midwifery assistant regulations, which I guess we're going to hear from Jennifer Simoes later today on what that might look like here. a report from the California Association of Licensed Midwives on a quality care program that they are developing, and they're hoping to have a slide presentation for us. And a discussion and decision on the 2017 Midwifery Advisory Council meeting dates. So I just need a motion to approve those.
Thank you.
So move.
Questions? Yeah. First,
Oh.
got a motion there, okay. Do we have a second? Okay, Mr. Warmoth. So, discussion. Any public comment? Any comments on the phone?
There are no comments at this time.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat? Aye. Dr. Bishop?
Aye.
Judge Feinstein? Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson? Aye. Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis? Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 24, update discussion and possible action on midwifery advisory council appointments. Mr. Warden.
At the August 18th MAC meeting, the MAC committee was held, and at that meeting were 4 of the applicants who applied for the MAC vacant position. And the members of the MAC committee voted to approve Diane Holzer, who's for the licensed midwife position, and that position is set to expire on June 30th, 2019. I'm asking for the board to recommend, to approve Ms. Holder's appointment to that.
Okay, can we have a motion?
So
Dr.
moved.
Levine moves. Second? Second. Dr. Bolat seconds. Any discussion? Okay, any public comment? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments at this time.
Ms. Toof, roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat? Aye. Dr. Bishop? Aye. Judge Feinstein? Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis? Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Warden. Next, oh, Jennifer.
Wow, what a great reception.
Nice.
Hey, this is going to be a very short implementation
Discussion on
report.
possible action on legislation and regulation, Ms. Amos.
All right. So, the 2016 legislative session has ended, and the legislature does not reconvene until December 5th. The governor's taken actions on all bills we have positions on, and this is the last year of a 2-year session, so it means if a bill didn't pass this year, they have to start over and get a new bill next year. So your legislative packets are under agenda tab 25. And on your tracker list, the bills in pink are board-sponsored bills, and the bills in green are bills the board has taken position on. All of these bills were signed into the law by the governor, so we'll be going over these bills today. I will only be giving a brief summary of the bills since we've discussed them all before, but if you have questions on specifics, I'd be happy to provide more information. And of note, every implementation plan includes a newsletter article in the winter newsletter, and also notifying the appropriate board staff or DCA staff or AG office staff. So I'm not going to go over those 2 items, just know that they're included for each bill. So I'm just going to start on the first bill, and it's in your packet, AB 1244 Gray. So this is the bill that specifies the circumstances in which a medical provider must be suspended from participating in the workers' compensation system. And it also ensures that the appropriate licensing board is notified of the suspension, which is, in our case, would be us, and provides for communication between various state agencies. The board supported this bill at the last board meeting, and so our implementation plan is to reach out to the administrative director of the Division of Workers' Compensation to establish a process for the board to receive this information. So if no one has questions, I'll move on to the next bill.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, AB 2024 Wood. This is the bill that provides an exemption to the ban on corporate practice of medicine for a federally certified critical access hospital. So it allows those hospitals to employ physicians and charge for professional services. And at one time, the medical board was the one doing this report, but we got amended out of the bill. So now it's the OSHPD, Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, that will be submitting the report to the legislature. So the only implementation plan for the board is to simply update our website.
Okay.
So if there's no questions, I'll move to the
Yeah,
next
go
one.
ahead.
Okay, AB 2744 Gordon, this is the Groupon bill.
Jennifer, before you go, for all public comment, we'll take as one when
the
you're
end?
all done. Yeah.
Okay. So AB 2744, this is the Groupon bill, so it basically allows, basically says for physicians that are advertising on Groupon, it shall not constitute, or Groupon or any other of those kind of third-party companies, it shall not constitute a referral patient that's prohibited by existing law. It does not allow those services to be essential health benefits. The board was neutral on that bill, and our only implementation plan is to update our website. Any questions? Okay. Moving on to AB 2745. I won't really go over this. This was our board-sponsored bill that included a lot of the technical changes we needed for allied health licenses that we license, and some other enforcement enhancements. If you want me to go over the changes, I can, but I think we've gone over it before.
You did before. So.
Yeah. Okay, so the board's implementation plan for this bill is to update our website. We'd have to revise the limited practice license application. We have to develop appropriate reinstatement forms for allied health licensees and add violation codes to the BREEZE system and make other necessary changes to BREEZE related to probation fees for the allied health licensees. Okay, so moving on. SB 482, Laura, I think everyone remembers this one well. This is the Cures bill that requires practitioners to actually consult Cures before they prescribe a Schedule 2, 3, or 4 controlled substance for the first time, and at least every 4 months thereafter. As you probably remember from last time, there's a lot of exemptions that went into that bill later in the process. When we talked at the last board meeting, there were some exemptions. Well, first we needed some technical clarifying changes, but there was one exemption in particular that was very broad, and so we worked with the author's office, we worked with interested parties like the California Medical Association, and we came up with language that everyone agreed with. It was actually put into the bill before it passed, and so we had no more concerns. And so, it passed like that, so that's a good thing. So our implementation plan is to include probably several standalone articles as the implementation date gets closer. What's important about this one is it doesn't become automatically in effect January 1st. So what has to happen is DOJ has to certify that the Cure system is up and ready. And then once that happens, it's 6 months after that date. So let's assume that they certify on January 1st, which I don't know if that's the case, then this bill won't really become effective until July. So that's what we're kind of looking. So you might have a couple as it becomes closer in our newsletter. And we'll also be sending email blasts to physicians as it comes closer. And it's kind of similar to what we've done for when the registration requirement for physicians. Just we want to make sure that physicians are informed and they know about this new requirement. We will also have to update our website, of course, and we're going to also really try to work with physician associations and organizations, like I said, just to really make sure this information gets out to all physicians and they know what the requirements are.
Okay.
Is there any questions on that one? Okay. The next bill, we haven't talked about this bill before because there was provisions that were contained in another bill, SB 563 PAN, that at the end of session were amended into this bill, and we supported those provisions. So this bill makes a lot of changes to the workers' compensation utilization review system. I'm not going to go over all those changes because the ones that we supported, like I said, that were in 563, they make sure that the physicians involved in authorizing injured worker medical care on behalf of the employer are not being inappropriately incentivized to modify, delay, or deny requests for medically necessary services. So this bill got signed, and our only implementation plan is to do the normal. What we usually do is put it in the newsletter and make sure the appropriate staff is notified.
Okay.
So no questions, moving on. SB 1174 McGuire, this is another one that we've talked a lot about. This is the bill that basically takes the existing DUA that we have with DHCS and DSS and makes it ongoing. not forever, but I know we had asked for a sunset date. Judge Feinstein, from 3 to 5 years, you brought up that issue. Kim and I met with Senator McGuire and his staff, and his sponsors were, well, number one, they just didn't want a sunset date at all. So we tried to work out with Senator McGuire, like what he would be okay with taking. So what ended up happening is he took a 10-year sunset date, but he did put in there that in 5 years, we have to do an internal review, and the review would actually consider the efficacy of the data in relation to the board's investigative and disciplinary actions, and would allow the board to revise its data review procedures if necessary. So that was kind of their negotiation. So it's a 10-year sunset date, but we do have in 5 years that we're going to go back and look and see, is this doing what it's supposed to do? So, you know, I wrote a letter to the governor's office kind of saying that we asked for this is what they gave us, but, so anyway, so our implementation plan is, first thing we have to do is we need to meet with DHCS and DSS and find out how we're gonna make sure that we get this data on an ongoing basis. Right now, we're currently working on the existing DUA. We've gotten to the point, I think Kim mentioned in her update yesterday, where we've identified some individuals. So now we're in the process of like, how do we work out this process to actually get those patient medical records? And so DSS is working with the counties, and we're kind of still, but what we need to do is we need to get this process established, because now it's gonna be on an ongoing basis, and we need to make sure that we can get the information we need to actually be able to go forward with the investigation. And so that's really our first step. We have to identify additional pediatric psychiatrist consultants that can perform these reviews, because right now we've only needed one, but with this being on an ongoing basis, we're gonna possibly need more than just that one pediatric psychiatrist. So we need to do that. We need to formalize the process, like I said, with DSS for requesting, so they're not delayed, so our investigations aren't delayed. And we also, part of the bill requires us to report out information, and so what we've suggested is we're just going to put that information like we would anything else in the annual report. So there'll be a subset of like how many complaints we received, and that's the ones that we've identified that are possible red flags that we go forward for investigation. And out of those, how many disciplinary actions were taken, and that will really show in that 10 years when the sunset date comes up, is this something that we should continue or not? So the data will show, yes, we've actually taken disciplinary actions, and this data has led to more investigations and disciplinary actions, or no. So that's kind of our implementation plan for that one.
Jennifer, is anyone, either McGuire's office or someone, working on the root cause of this problem, which is the meager resources at the county level and the state level in the State Department of Social Services? I mean, I heard from a couple child psychiatrists, there are very few in San Bernardino County.
Yeah.
If they walk away, we are in deep trouble. These kids are in deep trouble. So I'm just wondering, it's what we are supposed to do. I understand that's okay, but my concern is that we might go from bad to worse if there are not enough psychiatrists to really want to see these people, because there are so few, and these are medical patients. So you got to remember all those things. So we need to continuously push these people to really work on the underlying problem.
So, and I don't know if in the presentation yesterday, we talked about the BSA audit, and the BSA audit, we were a very small portion, like out of that whole hundreds of pages audit, we were like a couple pages. So they really did task DSS with being, this is a primary agency that is really, should be overseeing this issue. And so they did have, if you look at the audit recommendations, we just include, I think, the ones for us in the report, but DSS and DHCS really have a lot of audit recommendations to look at the whole system, like you're saying, and to look at ways to revamp that system and make sure that they're getting the foster children are getting the appropriate, treatment that they need. And so, it's going to be ongoing. So they had a hearing that I went to, that was like in the interim, and it was last month, I believe, and they've kind of brought both DSS and DHCS to the table and said, okay, what are you going to do to address the problem? And they're going to continue to bring them back as the legislature goes through this process. And so they're going to be looking for us in our data, but they're really holding DSS as the primary agency accountable for, I don't know if you have anything to add, Kim?
I was just going to say that counties have a big role in this too, and they're really listed in the BSA audit as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
So we're a small part of it, but the bigger picture
I
is.
understand that. My concern is, again, the same, that is, we might take from bad to worse. I was told that there are Other than a state institution like Patton, there are only fingers of both hands combined in the entire San Bernardino County who are child psychiatrists. So they are in such a demand. If they walk away from these kids, we got a bigger problem. So I just want everybody to understand that. So let's work with them, work with the services, make sure that these kids are not the ones who suffer in the end. With or without medication, that's not the issue. I think they need other support more than anything else, social services, psychologists, so many things.
Well, the good thing about that audit is it went through, through each, the counties, DSS, DHCS, and really tasked them with working together to solve this problem as the bigger picture issue, like you're mentioning, Dr. Gonadev. So the audit's actually a good thing. Okay, so there's no other questions. I'll move to SB 1177, and I think everyone remembers this bill. This is the bill that authorizes the establishment of a physician and surgeon health and wellness program within the medical board. And so if anyone has questions, but I know we've gone over it extensively. It was a very long analysis, and at the end, we didn't have any issues. They took, the author's office and the sponsors worked with us and took all of our technical amendments. At the very end, there were some that we believed were needed to ensure that this bill really complied with the uniform standards. Those technical amendments were taken, so we shouldn't have any issues with this bill. So the implementation, this is probably the biggest implementation because it's basically a new program within the board. And so, of course, we're going to do a lot of standalone articles in our newsletter. But our first step number one is we have to hire a position to basically be the liaison for this program. So we are going to be hiring an associate governmental program analyst. And we really hope that we can hire this soon because their first task is going to be to develop regulations, which need to be done before we can even start this program. So we are hoping to hire this position. We are estimating in January 2017. And the estimates I gave you are like the best scenario estimates. They're not set in stone. So this is what we're aiming for. There could be roadblocks along the way, but we're hoping not. So the first thing is to hire that position. We have to make some breeze changes that we have to be submitted now in order for them to be done in time. We have to develop regulations. So before that even happens, we need to have interested parties meetings to get input from all sides and then take that input and actually develop regulations. And the regulations has to specify the requirements for the administering entity, which is that third party that's going to actually be administering the program. And a big part of that is updating our uniform standards to make sure that they include the standards for these kind of programs, and also to include the communication from that administering entity to the board. And we also need to so once we do that, we will update those regulations. And so included in that regulatory package will be doing those new regulations, but also updating the board's disciplinary guidelines and uniform standards. It will be one regulatory package, and we're hoping that by the October 2017 meeting that we'll have these regulations ready to come to the board. And really all the other deadlines will depend on when that happens, because that's the first step. We can't even pick who the administering entity is until we have those regulations adopted. So once those regulations are adopted, we have to issue a request for proposals to select an administering entity, which is basically how the state does the contracting process. And so any administering entity will have to meet all those requirements that we set in the request for proposals. And so once we actually select the administering entity, then we'll have to do a new set of regulations to set the fee. So the bill is really clear that the participant has to bear the cost of the administering costs, the costs of the program, but we don't know until we select the administering entity how much they're going to charge, and so there's no way for us to set a fee. So it's really, each step is kind of contingent on the step before. So once we set that fee, then we have to work with the administering entity to also establish a process for filing complaints. So when the program notifies the board of those participants that aren't following what they should be doing, that terminate from the program, that withdraw from the program, we need to work on that process and obviously update our website once we do. So with all of those things that we have to do, and each step is dependent on the step before, we think that the earliest estimated date for this program to be operational is mid-2018. And that's if everything goes like we hope that it will go. And I know that, we've talked to California Medical Association, and they're kind of getting a lot of questions like, when is this, we want to enter this program right now. But it's just, there's a lot of things that have to be done. And Fortunately, there's no timelines in the bill because the bill doesn't even require us to do this program, it just authorizes us, but obviously we want to get it done as soon as we can, but there's just a lot of things that need to happen before it actually becomes operational.
Thank you. I think you put it so fast, but we all know what you're saying.
There's a lot of work to be done, let's sum it up.
Yes, we do.
And hopefully, like I said, the first step is that position, so we just hope that we can hire for that position and get things rolling. Okay, so the next bill is SB 1189, and I'm sure that you remember this. This is related to the forensic autopsy, and this is the one that says a forensic autopsy has to be conducted by a licensed physician and surgeon and requires that the results of that autopsy can only be determined by a licensed physician and surgeon. And this was an important one because looking at the law, we did believe that there were some gray areas. And so our only implementation plan is really to update the board's website to include information about this bill. Okay. The next bill is SB 1261 Stone, and this is a bill that deletes the California residency requirement for a voluntary status license. So basically, it allows an out-of-state individual to apply for a California license and ask for it to be put in voluntary status. So there was, just so you know, that there were some news articles after this bill passed that were really confusing and made it sound like previously the bill would have allowed for like a temporary 2-year license for people to come out of state, and it was kind of similar to the sponsoring entity bill that allows for people to come and register for a health fair type thing. By the time this bill passed, it was really just allowing you to apply for a California license and a voluntary status, but the newsletter articles were very confusing. It made it sound like the bill passed and what it did before, and so I was getting emails from physicians that read the article like, I want to apply for this 2-year temporary license and come and volunteer, and it was just really confusing. And so I called the author's office and they were like, I don't know why they're reporting that because, yeah, the bill just allows for the voluntary license. And so I read in the Capitol Morning that the author was actually going out to the communities and kind of putting information. So I made sure that they had the correct information. So when he went out and got questions on that to make sure, and I haven't really gotten any emails after that, so hopefully it's kind of worked itself out. But the articles were just, it was kind of weird because they were just incorrect. So we tried to correct that, but I'm not sure that it ever happened. But so really our implementation plan is we have to update our website regarding voluntary licenses because right now it says you have to be a California resident, and then we have to update our voluntary status license application and initial license application. So that's next bill, if there's no questions. Next bill and last bill is the omnibus bill, which was SB 1478. And this bill for us, our part really only deleted outdated sections of the Business and Professions Code, but something that got put in at the very end that actually relates to more boards than just us, but it clarifies that the annual fee for the CURE system shall not be applied to licensees in a retired or an active status. So basically, if you're not practicing, then you don't have to, if you're in an inactive or non-practice status license, you don't have to pay the CURES fee. So that's something that got put in at the end. So our implementation plan is to submit a request for change to BREEZE. So every board is going to have to do this independently, submit a change request for BREEZE to exclude the CURES fee from those inactive licensees. And we're going to update the board's website to specify that the CURES fee does not need to be paid by licensees with a retired or inactive status.
Okay, so actually when I get my renewal of license, does it say that this part is CURES or only for and this part is for license? Or
I believe that it does, right, correct, Kim?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, we just pay, so it's okay.
Yeah. So now if you're in a non-practice status, you don't have to pay that fee. And I think it was due to complaints being like, why do I have to pay if I don't even practice? So they took care of that concern. So that concludes my presentation on 2016 legislation. And like in other years when sunset, we don't have any legislative proposals this year because anything we would have as a proposal will be put in as part of the sunset process, and those are included in the new issues. With the exception of pursuant to Dr. Bolat's presentation, if the UC Office of the President decides they want to go forward with taking away that sunset date for the UCLA IMG program, then we'll work with our office on doing that. So we could do it either this year or next year, but that would be the only thing this year in addition to the sunset report.
Yeah, that alone is big enough, so thank you. So any comments from Dr. Cross?
Ms. Simoes, you have done an incredible job. Thank you. You are making the board more influential and interactive with our legislature to further our mission of public protection. If there are things that you feel could be done to better enhance your activities, please let Kim know, because I think that you are an incredibly valuable resource for us. Regarding 1177 and the Physician Wellness Program, you know I've been a strong advocate for that to fill the void that we've had since our failed diversion program. But I also respect the opposition to there being a physician wellness program, and I don't think that the opposition intends that we shouldn't be concerned about physician wellness. But I respect the Center for Public Interest Law and the Consumers Union for Patient Safety, and I would encourage them to submit written guidelines from their point of view, because we share the interest of consumer protection, for us to consider as we put together the regulations and the guidelines for the physician wellness program that we will have. I respect the information that they've brought to us, and as best we can, I'd like to include them in the process.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to have an interested parties meeting, because there's a lot of, from everyone, from both sides, stakeholders that are interested in this and how we're going to actually implement it. And so it's a perfect time to have an interested parties meeting and make sure everyone's invited and that everyone can kind of present their thoughts, you know, to the board before we go through the process of developing regulations. So we'll make sure that both those groups and others are invited.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, so do you need a board motion to have an interested party meeting? Okay, that's good. No, absolutely, I totally agree. I think it is an important legislation, and we need to put it right. Like I'm sure Julie will say, she doesn't want another diversion program, and neither do I. So with that, I'll go to public comment. Julie DeAngelo-Felmuth. Julie, how did I know that you would be definitely on this one?
Good morning. Excuse me. Julie DeAngelo-Felmuth, the Administrative Director of the Center for Public Interest Law. Thank you, Dr. Kraus, for your comments. I do want to comment on SB 1177 because the order of the implementation steps outlined in your memo is a little bit perplexing to me. The bill does not create a program for monitoring substance abusing physicians, nor does it require this board to create a program. As Jennifer said, it simply authorizes the board to create a program, and that's a very serious decision on your part. So I think the first step has to be that this board must decide whether it even wants to create a program. And that decision needs to be fully informed by the problems of the prior program, which, as you know, failed 5 performance audits in the 27 years that it existed. You need to know of those problems, and you need to clarify your intent to avoid those problems. The second step, I believe, has to be how you as the board will oversee this program to make sure it complies with the law, that it complies with the uniform standards, and that it actually protects consumers from substance abusing physicians. The old program was not overseen by this board. It was overseen by an outside committee controlled by the California Medical Association and the California Society of Addiction Medicine for the vast majority of the existence of the program. Toward the end, the medical board abolished that external committee and set up its own internal standing committee on the diversion program, which fairly aggressively sought and got information on the operations of the diversion program. But by that time, it was too late. But I firmly believe that this board needs to think ahead and think how it will oversee, how you will oversee this program. Then you adopt the regulations and hire the person to run the program and hire do the contracting process for the outside vendor. The bill is not a fait accompli, and you have some serious decisions to make. We are well aware of the problems with the old program, as is the legislature, and you need to operate with transparency and deliberation and determination to avoid the problems that were created by the old program. And we're here to help you do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Felmuth. Next one is Lisa McGiffer.
Lisa McGiffert with Consumers Union Safe Patient Project, and thank you also for your comments, Dr. Kraus. And I'm talking about Senate Bill 1177. And I just want to say, throughout the process of this legislation, our concern and the people we work with, their concern has been that we are creating another diversion program. And I would say to you today, it is up to you to make sure that this doesn't become a diversion program. And what does that mean to me as a consumer advocate and to people who are depending on you to responsibly exercise your duties to discipline doctors who may be a danger to patients? That means if you are reviewing a complaint that includes a problem with a standard of care, perhaps harm to a patient, and includes substance abuse, if you send that person, that doctor, to the diversion program as your decision, that is a diversion. If you take action, official action, that is public information for people to look up and see that it happened, and in that action you refer that doctor to the program, that would not be diversion. And to me it's very distinctive, because the second example means that the public will have the information that they should have about this case. The program very clearly states that it is an early intervention program, and I urge you to treat it as such and not to use it for repeated problems. We, of course, are very concerned about maintaining the uniform standards because a lot of us worked on those and feel that they're very important. And so we look forward to working with you as this moves forward. We will be monitoring the program, and we'll raise concerns when we have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moss, and I want to assure you that this is a board-supported program, and everyone will be involved. There will be interested parties meeting, includes the medical associations, addiction medicine, CMA, Ms. Felmuth, and the Consumer Union. So we will do our best. That's all I can tell you. But as I mentioned, this is a board-supported program. Dr. Cross.
I appreciate the advice that SB 1177 as law authorizes the board to create this program, but that we may need an action of the board to do so. So if it is in order, I would move that the board go forward in the spirit of SB 1177 with the creation of a physician and surgeon health and wellness program.
Okay. Do we have a second? Second, Dr. Lewis. Any comments from the board? Okay. Any public comment? Any comments on, yes?
I just have a quick question, and this is for Kim Oldenburg. So, in light of the comments we heard from the public, I'm sorry. In light of the comments that we heard from the public, does a task force have to outline how the physician wellness program will proceed, or do we collectively do that as a board? How does that happen?
So what our plans are is that we'll hold interested parties meetings. Really, Ms. Webb and Ms. Dobbs are really going to be the ones that lead this, because really this has to comply with the uniform standards. So we're going to have to go literally through every uniform standard and write out how this entity is going to have to comply with each one of those and how they're going to have to report to the board on each one of those. And then we'll put that kind of language together, have an interested parties meeting, get input from the interested parties, and then that's the language that we'll be planning to bring back to the board. Now that the regulatory process has changed, as you heard from Ms. Lawley, this will be something that we'll have to work with the Department of Consumer Affairs and agency with as well, because before language can even be brought, into a regulatory process, it has to go through them first now. So that's going to lengthen our upfront time for it. So I don't think that we need to have a task force. I just think it's going to be a lot of staff work to sit down and literally go through the bill, go through the uniform standards, and make sure that we have everything outlined there, and then bring it to the board. And then we'll be going through the regulatory process as well, which allows for public comment then. But we definitely want to have the interested parties meeting because we want everybody, we never like to bring regulations in here until we've heard from both sides so we can make the changes before it comes before the board.
All right, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Any comments on the phone?
There are no comments at this time.
Okay, Ms. Toof, roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat?
Aye.
Dr. Bishop?
Aye.
Judge Feinstein?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes. Mr. Morse, 25B, status of regulatory actions.
So 25B is actually the last page of your packets, and this is the chart that shows the status of all pending regulations. And so I can answer any questions if members have questions on that chart.
Oh, my goodness, you're not going to go at turbo speed and say something? Jennifer,
I'll leave it to you guys if you have questions.
I never thought you could get tired of talking, so keep going. Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
We always appreciate Jennifer anyway, so. We have one public comment, Carrie.
Carrie Sparrowvon. I'd just like to understand, and I'm sure other people that aren't as familiar with this process would also like to understand, why does it take 6 to 12 months from the date of final adoption by the board to get it to the DCA so that it can then be moved forward to the Office of Administrative Law? I'm just wondering
Comment, I will ask
why it's so long.
Either Kim or Jennifer to answer, but anything else for you? You have a comment?
That's it. That's all I wanted to know.
Who can comment?
What is she referring?
Carrie?
It varies on getting the file together, preparing the final statement of reasons and order of adoption. But with respect to midwifery assistance, it's prepared and the packet will go to DCA and then the agency for approval and then submission. And we can talk further if you
Okay,
want.
I know that I'm going to get questions from my public, and as I was looking at this chart, I was seeing that what's going on with the midwifery assistant regulations is not unusual, given what I'm seeing for the other regulations, and so I need to know what to say when somebody asks me, why is it taking so long?
The other thing that happens sometimes is even after final adoption by the board, some of those we've actually gone back and found errors in, and we've had to bring them back. So some of these I know are unusual cases that we've had, because we've actually gone back and found errors and then had to go out for another 15-day on some of them.
Yeah, well, I know that the midwifery assistant
Ms.
regulation
Perron,
had something
can
that
I-
had to be added.
Carrie, yeah,
as
let
well.
me have you and talk to our attorneys afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you, though. Thank you, Jennifer. Ooh, we're coming to an end. Number 26, agenda items for the January 17 meeting in Sacramento area. Do any of the members have any agenda items to be added? Okay. Is there a public comment on the agenda items? Any comments on the phone?
No, there are no comments at this time.
Thank you. Actually, we finished even very earlier. There is no further business. Meeting is adjourned.